Good morning. Today I'm going to continue the topic of evolution. Today we are going to talk about the mechanisms of evolution. That means, how does evolution happen? I had discussed this in the previous section, slightly talked about natural selection. So today we are going to elaborate on natural selection, mutation, drift, and gene flow. These are the mechanisms of evolution. And we are also going to touch upon sexual selection and the difference between natural selection and sexual selection. And finally, going to talk about misconceptions about evolution. So let's look at natural selection. So let's take this familiar examples of beetles of various colors. So let's say that in a population, there are different color morphs. That means that there are different colored beetles, all of the same species, but the individuals show certain variation in color. Okay, and these are heritable traits. Remember, for evolution to occur, the traits have to be heritable, right? So, in a population, there are brown morphs and green morphs. And say there is a bird comes and eats more green beetles than brown beetles, because these are all are sitting on a tree bark, and brown ones are more camouflaged. And over time, in the next generation, because there are more brown beetles left, you will get more and more brown beetles remaining, because that particular color trait is more advantageous, and those are selected over time. And that's basically mechanism in which natural selection operates. Okay, so whatever trait is advantageous for in a population, that is favored over other traits. So, in that sense, fitness or Darwinian fitness can be thought of as an ability of individual to survive and reproduce. Okay, it's you should not think or you should not confuse that with physical fitness. It's not that the fittest of the organism survives. It's not that that organism has to be really strong in terms of physical fitness, or really loud, or really have the best of the plumage or best of the colors. It's not the best. You might have heard of this term called survival of the fittest, but it's not the fittest of the lot. It is, as long as that trait confers the ability of an individual to reproduce, survive and reproduce, that gets selected. So, in that term, fitness is also relative. So, it is how well an individual survives and reproduces compared to other individuals of its own species. And the trait that increases an organism's fitness relative to other organisms that are lacking it is called adaptation. And that's an important term to remember and understand. Yeah, so adaptation is something, it's a trait that increases an organism's fitness relative to others that lack it. Let's take up a concrete example of adaptation. Let's look at this leaf mimicking katydid, which is basically an insect that is which resembles a green leaf. As you can see here, there are veins of the leaf, and even some deformities of the leaf are also mimicked by these insects. So it's not that this insect in one generation, within a generation, it kind of starts looking like a leaf. It's not like it has some kind of a cognitive ability saying that, oh, okay, I have to look and sit near a leaf. It is evolved over time to look like this. And it has an advantage because it gains protection from predators, because predators, especially visual predators, can't recognize that, or maybe they are unable to recognize that this is in fact an insect. So in that way, it's an adaptive trait where by mimicking a leaf, some insects are able to get protection from their predators. Another example is that of eucalyptus tree, where the seeds are fire tolerant, and the eucalyptus oil itself is toxic to many animals. And the leaf, as you can see here, hangs down, to avoid transpiration because it's very hot in which where eucalyptus is usually present or distributed. So this is also various adaptations. So fire tolerance or toxic oil and leaf kind of hanging down are various kinds of adaptations that this plant has evolved over time. Okay, so another example of evolution or another mechanism in which evolution occurs is that of mutation. Okay, so one thing which is really important to understand is that not all mutation matter to evolution. Only that those mutation which happen in the germline is actually important for evolution because it can be passed on to the next generation. So if a mutation happens on the skin or elsewhere in the body, those are all somatic mutations, and that is unless it is coded in the germline, that means that it has if it is heritable and it's present in the germline, only then those mutations are transferred. Another example or another important thing about mutation is that they are random. There is nothing that all mutations are bad. Okay, so mutations can be beneficial, they can be neutral, or even detrimental to the organisms. We mostly hear things which are really lethal to human beings, but there are various examples. Let's take up one such example, which is neutral, so which doesn't have any effect on the organism. So there is a mutation which causes cat ears to curl. So you can see that the cat's ears are kind of curled up, right? So that's a neutral mutation. That means that there is no effect on of this mutation on cats. Okay, let's take an example of beneficial mutation which has a positive effect on the organism which has that mutation. So back in 1940s, DDT was considered a miracle drug because mosquitoes killed a lot of insects, especially mosquitoes, and that prevented cause of a lot of diseases, including malaria. Right? So people were spraying DDT very, very widely, and you can see in this advertisement, it was being broadcasted as that DDT is really very effective and very good. So it was sprayed on your domestic animals and also various crop plants and human beings and wildlife. So the thing is, insects develop resistance for this DDT very quickly. So from an insect's perspective, the gene which confers resistance to DDT is a beneficial mutation. So some nucleotide or a bunch of nucleotides in a gene would have gotten mutated, and the new variant would be basically resistant to DDT. And that's why we are saying that it is, of course, it's detrimental to several other things down the line. We have known that DDT now is actually bad for several other things, but it is beneficial for insects, those who have gotten resistance towards it. So that's an example for beneficial mutation. There are several examples of harmful or lethal, mutation being harmful or lethal. There are several diseases. I'm not going to go into details, but Huntington's disease and Marfan's syndrome are some of it. You can actually look up what are the symptoms of these diseases. And apart from this, there are several diseases. Some are actually lethal. Some are really harmful for various organisms, including human beings. Okay, so now let's look at the next mechanism of evolution, that is genetic drift. So let's get back to our favorite example of beetles in a population in an area, and of course green beetles and brown beetles. And let's say just by chance alone, say some individuals get destroyed. Say here it's depicted as like a human being stomping on certain beetles. That's a literal example, but it can be that just by chance alone, some beetles are dead, or some beetles are destroyed or killed more than the other kind. So, if that happens, I'm saying that some individuals with specific alleles reproduce more than other individuals. What do I mean by alleles? Allele is a variant of a gene. So you can imagine that the color green is caused by a kind of allele, and brown color is caused by another kind of allele. So when it comes to genetic drift or gene pool, we often think about allelic distribution. How are the gene variants are distributed in a population. So let's say that a specific allele gets, there are fewer in number in a population when compared to other other alleles, and as a result, in the next generation, the distribution or the frequency of alleles is altered, right? Some reproduce, some survive more than others, and as a result, there is differential reproduction. So, genetic drift happens in all population, big and small, but its effect is more pronounced in smaller populations, because say suppose there are only 6 individuals of this beetle, and 2 of those green beetles die, and then going forward, there's only 1 green beetle left and 3 brown beetles left, right? So you can see that how certain alleles can get lost, meaning they are not present in the next generation, and because of this, certain traits can completely change in a population, and this over time results in evolution, because there is changing frequency of alleles, and it further leads to evolution. Okay, next mechanism of evolution is gene flow. Gene flow is nothing but migration, that is movement of individuals within a population to some another population. Okay, so as depicted again by the beetle example, let's say there is these brown colored beetles in one area and they move to another area where there are largely green colored beetles, again all of the same species. So these are, I'm talking about individuals which having variation within them. So let's say there are some brown colored beetles which go to the population where they are dominated by green colored beetles. You can think about movement of individuals or movement of alleles or genes from one place to another place. So because of that, there is mixing of allelic frequencies, right? So you can think about gene flow as, if there is continuous gene flow, it maintains some kind of mixing of various alleles within that population. And if there is barrier to gene flow, that is, say suppose, for example, there is a big river flowing between 2 populations, and these beetles can't cross the river in order to go to this particular area. So barriers can be anything, natural barriers such as rivers or canyons or volcanoes, whatever it is, and these ultimately could result in speciation. And my colleague will talk about allopatric and sympatric speciation later on. But this is another mechanism in which evolution can occur. Okay, now we are switching gears and thinking about sexual selection. Before that, let's take a look at these various pictures here, right? So whether you can look at these, so you can see that one individual has slightly different kinds of ornaments than the other. This is a very common example, right? You all know that peacocks have this flamboyantly, brilliantly colored feathers, whereas peahens don't. So male and female differences are known as sexual dimorphism. Fishes, swordtail fish, again there is a difference between male and female. Lions, of course, you can see the very clear differences, and also frogs and This is an example of spiders where there is drastic size difference. This is actually the female and this tiny fellow is a male. So there are various differences between the sexes, and that is known as sexual dimorphism. It can be color, it can be size, it can be some kind of an ornamentation, it can be hair. So all these differences are known as sexual dimorphism. So the question is, why should male and female of the same species be different? So the idea is that it is because of sexual selection, and sexual selection favors an organism's ability to mate, right? So these traits are basically selected by the opposite sex. Often the female would basically decide by looking at these traits, which male to mate with. So there is a strong selection pressure which is selecting for some specific traits, and that's known as sexual selection. Formal definition is basically sexual selection favors an organism's ability to obtain a mate. So it's also powerful, so powerful that certain traits can be harmful for the survival of the individual. Now, what do I mean by that? So let's take peacock itself as an example, right? So peacocks have this really big tail with all these brightly colored feathers, right? But though the female is preferring this kind of a trait, there are certain disadvantages to having such a big tail. You might want to think about what are the disadvantages. One obvious disadvantage is that because of such heavy tail, the peacocks are not able to fly very fast, and hence they won't be able to escape from predators very quickly. So though it's an advantage is to have these brightly colored tail to attract females, on the other hand, it's costly for the males to produce these things, because these tails, because it hinders its ability to escape from predators because it can't fly very fast. Natural selection and sexual selection, as you can see, works in actually different directions. Through natural selection, actually, if you take peacock as an example, natural selection would favor for shorter tails, perhaps because it's easy to fly, and not so conspicuous tails because it attracts predators, right? But on the other hand, sexual selection would favor brightly colored tails and longer tails because perhaps the female would mate with individuals with longer tails and more eye spots. So this is an example where drive or the selection, natural selection is pulling the organism in one way and the sexual selection is in the other way. So whatever the selection pressure of whatever is stronger, that's how the evolution will basically, that's the direction evolution will take. So to summarize, so till now we have talked about various mechanisms of evolution. So we talked about natural selection, we talked about mutation, how there can be neutral or beneficial or harmful mutation. We also talked about genetic drift and how, because of just chance alone, the allelic frequency might change in a population. We also talked about gene flow, that's basically movement or migration of animals, individuals from one population to another, and because of which, if there is barrier to gene flow, that can basically cause speciation. And finally, we talked about sexual selection that influences and that favors an organism's ability to mate. And we also learned about how natural selection and sexual selection are basically two opposing forces acting upon a species.